puede echar un vistazo por YouTube para ver si hay algún comentario que diga no se oye nada y estas cosas, ayuda. Hola a todos, ¿qué tal? Hijos de Newton. Hoy estamos aquí en un directo más en Date un Blog, donde tengo el gusto de compartir este espacio con expertos en teoría de la relatividad general. Vamos a hablar de gravedad, de ondas gravitacionales, de física de partículas también. Va a ser un directo muy completo y donde además tengo compañía no solamente aquí en las sillas de dos invitados especiales, sino de gente ahí atrás. ¿Hay gente o no? Sí. Hay gente, ¿verdad? Hay gente. O sea, miles. Esto se puede imaginar. Hay gente por todos los lados, una auténtica locura. No, esto va a ser excepcional. Un directo que, como ven, abierto al público, que hago desde Mallorca. No sé si conocen Mallorca, porque seguramente sí, son muy conocidas en España. Unas islas maravillosas. Si tienen la oportunidad, vengan, porque es un auténtico paraíso en la Tierra. Invitado por la Universidad de las Islas Baleares, que en estos actos relativos al descubrimiento de las ondas gravitacionales, pues tengo la posibilidad de venir aquí a compartir un poquito de ciencia con la gente. Y son ellos, la Universidad de las Islas Baleares, que han sido tan amables de darnos este espacio para poder compartir aquí con la gente ahí arriba. Estudiantes, hay estudiantes, jóvenes, jovenzuelos y jovenzuelas. Hay también aquí muchos nerds, ¿no? De física, de química, me encanta. O sea, les veo las caras y me siento como en casa. El caso es que gracias a la Universidad de las Islas Baleares por dejarnos este espacio, este lugar para poder compartir esto. Vamos a hablar de física. Y antes de comenzar, vamos a recibir unas palabras de los anfitriones. En este caso va a ser de Jaume, que es el vicerrector de investigación de la Universidad de las Islas Baleares, que nos va a dar la bienvenida a este lugar tan hermoso, este paraíso en la Tierra. Muchas gracias, Jaume. Un aplauso. Siéntate aquí.
Me siento aquí. Bueno. ¿Sí?
Sí, adelante.
¿Sí, se me oye? Sí, bueno. Muchas gracias, Javier. Bienvenidos todos, los que estáis aquí, los que estáis del otro lado del wire. A ver, yo aquí estoy como telonero de Javier, ¿vale? Que quede claro. Yo soy el telonero y no lo sé hacer tan bien como él, efectivamente, si no, no sería el telonero. Pero quería compartir con vosotros unas cuantas reflexiones. La primera es que yo no estoy aquí como vicerrector. Hoy estoy como director de tesis de Alicia Sintes. Ese fue el más gran honor que he tenido en mis últimos años, y eso que pasaron ya muchos años desde entonces. Pero bueno, ahora back to my institutional role. ¿Okay? A ver, hoy nos visita un Nobel. Un Nobel es símbolo de muchísimas cosas. De excelencia, de creatividad, de esfuerzo, todo lo que queráis. Pero sobre todo, es un claro exponente de aquello que los humanos somos capaces de crear. En el caso que nos ocupa, además, el Nobel de Física de 2017 es un claro ejemplo de gran ciencia, de ciencia colaborativa, de aquello bueno y bello que nuestra especie es capaz de crear cuando trabaja conjuntamente bajo la dirección de sabios, de auténticos sabios. El premio Nobel de Física se lo han otorgado merecidamente a aquellos que concibieron la idea y coordinaron a lo largo de más de 20 años equipos humanos y interdisciplinares. Poca broma, como decimos aquí en catalán, en Baleares, poca broma. Fijaos que se creó la ciencia y la tecnología que no existían, pero que eran necesarias para llegar a la meta. Y la meta era la comprobación experimental de una predicción teórica de otro premio Nobel, Einstein, que había tenido lugar 100 años antes. Bueno, y ahora, como soy universitario y además soy vice de esta casa, me toca hablar sobre las universidades y el papel que desempeñan en la creación de conocimiento, de ciencia, en mayúsculas. Mirad, en España, algo más del 65% de toda la producción científica se hace en las universidades. Más del 65%. Y todo ello, a pesar de los recortes presupuestarios y de la financiación que tenemos. Por poneros aquí un ejemplo bonito, no sé si habrá algún político entre los seguidores o entre el público, pero bueno, estaría bien que les llegara. Sí. Lo sé. Era retórico. A ver, mientras el presupuesto anual de nuestra universidad no llega a los 94 millones de euros, y eso a pesar de las mejoras continuas que hemos tenido a lo largo de estos últimos años y que agradecemos, pues el presupuesto de la Universidad de Stanford, que es como la nuestra en términos de número de estudiantes, supera los 4.200 millones de euros, ¿vale? 94 versus 4.200. No me hagáis sacar las cuentas, que los números no se me dan del todo bien. Esto, junto con una política muy decidida de atracción de talento, ha situado a la Universidad de Stanford en el segundo lugar del ranking de Shanghai. Nosotros no estamos mal, estamos entre los 500 y 600, pero evidentemente es otra liga, es otra liga. 94 versus 4.200, ¿vale? Sacad las cuentas. Y ya que hablamos de números, no puedo resistirme a compartir un par de cifras más con vosotros. Y esto es lo que tenemos los científicos, nos gustan los números, ¿qué le vamos a hacer? Mirad, el detector LIGO, el resultado de esta colaboración, costó en los primeros 20 años de creación unos 600 millones de dólares a lo largo de sus primeros 20 años. Bien, un submarino nuclear cuesta 20 veces más. Ahí lo dejo. Hay más ejemplos. El telescopio espacial Hubble costó cerca de 3.000 millones de dólares. ¡Wow! ¿No? Bueno, la guerra de Irak, a lo largo de sus 4 primeros años, costó más de 120 veces esa cantidad y dejó algo más de 100.000 muertos. Llamadme romántico si queréis, pero yo prefiero una mirada a las estrellas que una mirada a las tumbas. ¿Qué más? Nada, ya acabo. Acabo con una reflexión y cierre. Se lo cantaba Joan Manuel Serrat a su madre. Decía: supe que lo sencillo no es lo necio, que no hay que confundir valor y precio. Que un Nobel nos visite y que lo haga, porque aquí en Baleares existe el único grupo español admitido en la colaboración LIGO, poca broma. 1.200 científicos de 108 instituciones de 18 países, que nos visite un Nobel, digo, no tiene precio. Valor, sí. Muchas gracias y el micro es vuestro.
Venga. Muchas gracias, John. Muchas gracias y muy apropiadas palabras para poner en valor todo el trabajo de la universidad como centro de conocimiento. Nos está viendo mucha gente de todos los rincones del mundo. Espero que habrá muchos latinoamericanos también que no solo madrugan para ver la Copa del Mundo, también para ver algo de esto. Y es un mensaje muy importante porque efectivamente las universidades es el centro desde el que se distribuye el saber al mundo. Y estar en una universidad hablando de física, qué mejor lugar, ¿no? Una cosa antes de empezar es que, como siempre, van a poder mandar mensajes para hacer preguntas. Por si tienen alguna pregunta o lo que sea, por Twitter, date un Barish. Es el hashtag de hoy, muy original, como saben, siempre al límite con la creatividad. Y cualquier cosa que quieran preguntar, pues nada, mandan un tweet o lo que sea. Aquí en sala van a poder levantar la mano, pero si estás fuera, estés donde estés, tienes una pregunta, lo puedes hacer, date un Barish y lo hacemos. Pero empezamos ya, vamos a empezar ya con heavy metal, ¿vale? Con lo que es el sangrado de ojos, con temas de los que duelen pero a la vez gustan. Y esto no es más que otra cosa que la física a tope. Y lo vamos a hacer invitando aquí a subirse, a acompañarme a nuestro gran invitado especial, Barry Barish. So please, Barry, can you come with us? So a big applause to him. So welcome here.
Thank you.
Welcome to Datum Blog. So these
I
are
see myself.
yeah, and these are the people following this conversation. So first of all, thank you very much for coming. Do you like Spain? How do you like Spain, Baleares?
Oh, it's fantastic.
Awesome, right?
Awesome.
It's wonderful. So before starting, just I will ask you to introduce yourself. Normally, people introduce you, right? Like saying all your things. Can you just say a few words about your background, what you like? Easy.
Easy. My name's Barry Barish. I'm an American, obviously. I live in California my whole life, almost, except when I was small. I grew up in California. I live at the beach in California, so it looks like Mallorca a little bit. A little bit more like desert, though. And I went to school in California. I went to graduate school in California. My job is in California, but I work with an international team from all over the world, having fun doing physics.
I love it. Having fun. This is one of the things I always say, like a scientist is a kid playing with ideas.
Absolutely. And tools.
And tools, of course, it's important. And money.
Money.
Well,
we
I
need
mean, money for the tools.
But money for the tools.
And then I want to invite the second guest today here. She's also a scientist. He's been working for experiments in gravitational waves with him, with Barry Barish. She is from here, from the Islas Baleares, so he's a national hero, I would say. So let's please invite her, Alicia Sientes, here with us. So Alicia, thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your passion. Yes, you should come.
Get closer then.
Yeah. Yes. So thank you for coming and sharing your knowledge and your passion for science with us. So again, can you say a few words about who you are?
No, I will start by thanking you for being here today. Thank you, Barry. Thanking the students and congratulating all those students that have defended yesterday and today the Treball de Fita Grau. You have done great.
Say!
So who am I? I'm a small person coming from a small island, but working with a beautiful and huge team.
Small person doing big things.
No, I'm a small person doing small things, but there are other persons doing very big things and putting a team of fantastic people together and being able to do that. And it's a family. It's a huge family with all the problems of any huge family, or even over 20 families. And he can handle them extremely well. That's the talent that I don't have.
Well, this is an important thing in science also, the human part, right? How people work together, how they put together ideas to create a big thing. These big experiments, they demand not only ideas, but also collaboration, empathy. How can you deal with this? You don't learn this in the physics school, right?
Because underneath it's all fun and important.
That's right. That's right.
If you want to make things real, then you need also some discipline.
Yeah. This is the interesting thing of big collaboration. You collaborate with people from everywhere in the world. I always say, I was living in Geneva, working at CERN, and I sometimes say that CERN makes more for the humanity sometimes than ONU in terms of diplomacy. How makes people from different worlds. Is science international language?
More so than politics.
Sometimes, yeah. Apparently.
No, we know how to work together in science much better than politicians know how to work together or countries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is something that you don't learn in the school, but it's so important for a scientist, how you deal with people, of course. But this is something that you have to develop, right? Somehow.
Yes, and also the respect. So when you have this very large collaboration, you have to be open, and you have to respect people and different mentalities, different cultural backgrounds. Even if when somebody suddenly starts praying in your office next to you and suddenly says that they don't like Serrano.
This is an insult. Everybody should like it.
No, it's not an insult, it's just that you have to learn.
But again, it's interesting also that the fact that there are a lot of people from Mexico, from Colombia, from Argentina. It's a really beautiful thing that science today is an international thing that is relating people from everywhere in the world. So, in your experience, how do you feel this collaboration with in a multidisciplinary and multi-international? How do you feel it?
It's natural. We have the same interest. Basically, a few people in the world learn science at a deep level, whether it's physics or biology or something else. And so we have common bonds in what we actually are interested in. And the fact that we come from different cultures, different sociology, different politics, is underneath it all, we have the same scientific values, the scientific interests, and we came together because of the same scientific problems. Then we have to organize ourselves, but the basic underneath part is that we're all having fun looking at the same problems.
I like it because somehow there is a different message sent from politics. Sometimes they say, no, not together, and science say, yes, please, together. It's beautiful. But I introduced them in this casual way, but actually we're with two important people in science because they together in a big collaboration of more than 1,000 people, they understood something that was hidden in the universe. It's what we call the gravitational waves. Today we understand a little bit more how the universe works thanks to what Barry and Alicia did together with many people. So gravitational wave, it's like the big name of this work. What are the gravitational waves? Easy for like in the Twitter.
Barry explained extremely well yesterday that we have two types of waves: light, electromagnetic waves, and gravitational waves. And gravitational waves are now the new messengers. We are now having the fresh new tools to observe the universe in a completely different way. So they have properties completely different from light. And from that we can get many more information that was not accessible to us before.
Mm-hmm. So they are here.
They are here.
They are now.
Yes.
They're all the way around.
Yes.
And what are they doing with it? I mean, I feel okay right now. Why? I mean, are they like with my body?
Yeah, they're making you fatter, shorter, and taller.
All the time.
All the time.
Taller, please.
Once you're tall, you're shorter. Fatter,
Ah.
wider.
So it's like something that is distorting the space all around.
Yeah, and you, a little bit.
But it's funny because it's so close to us, but then it's difficult to realize it is there because
The effect is
more than
so
100 years.
Yeah, Einstein was the first to understand that maybe there are gravitational waves. 102 years ago.
But he even questioned himself so many times if they existed or not.
Yeah.
I mean, he was not even alive during the Chapel Conference.
That's
He
right.
passed away.
So Einstein had the idea in 1960 that there were gravitational waves. He questioned the idea 20 years later, and he never said anything about it again. And it was many years later, in the 1950s, that theoretical physicists believed finally that they must exist, but we didn't know if they could be seen because even though you get taller, shorter, fatter, the effect is so tiny that it's an enormous experimental challenge.
Mm. So it might be frustrating, right? You have it here, so close to you, like dark matter, right? It's like it's
But
here.
we have seen gravitational waves.
Yeah, that's the point. But it must be like whenever you wanted to find it, it must be frustrating. It's here, it's with us, but it's not easy to find. I guess this is where engineering helps us to understand the world, right?
Yes, in engineering, that happens all around us for practical reasons and engineering that we have to create first because we need it before society needs the engineering.
But then, so the story comes in like this. Einstein predicts this undulation of space and time. He has some doubts about it, right? Like during 20 years. And suddenly someone says, let's find these gravitational waves. This is somehow like 50 years of trying to find it.
There are many more things going on, many more things getting developed. I mean, I don't know if Einstein believed or not in gravitational waves. I guess I believe yes. But I think he did not believe that we will end up never seeing them. But you cannot blame that he was not having hope. The point is that during his time, we didn't know anything about black holes. We didn't know anything about neutron stars. We didn't know the existence of these objects. It was later. Basically, all the big developments in astronomy started in the 60s when we start discovering the first. Well, start thinking about the neutron stars and you discover the first pulsars. Then you start even thinking that all these quasars they might be related to black holes. So then suddenly you have these mathematical bodies, that is equations, numbers, artifacts, but suddenly they change status. They are now astrophysical bodies. And it's actually from this that we have the chance to see gravitational waves. And actually, it's the first things we have seen. So now we know they exist, but we start thinking 60s. So then we can start thinking like, oh, these are our source of gravitational waves. It still took a few more years. And I guess a big push was also again the discovery of the first pulsar magnetic system, in which you could have an observational evidence that gravitational waves do exist, and that started pushing the field even more.
Yeah, it must have been really the day. How was it that day? I mean, it must have been the day it appeared.
I think we have 1,000 or 1,200 collaborators, and I think the reactions to a scientific discovery are very personal and different.
Yeah.
So if you ask 1,200 people, they'll give you different answers. I don't know Alicia's answer. We haven't had this conversation, but for me, it was kind of panic. Not eureka. Eureka is the possible and happy, but panic is that now you have to find out if you're right and why you made a mistake or how you convince others. And so that's panic.
Wow. Panic. Imagine you find something and you feel panic because it's part of the game, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it happens, you make a discovery, it can be a mistake.
It can't be a mistake, but it's rare that you can be certain immediately.
Yeah.
This was close because it looked like it was supposed to.
Actually, how was your, did you feel panic as well?
No.
See, I said that was a different.
She felt joy.
I mean, that day was interesting. That Monday we were starting the classes here. I cannot tell you, well, if you want, there is a panic attack before, because here, physics, the Faculty of Science, I would call it like zero zone, wasn't the construction of the sun, in and out. And we have been working on the sun, and some of our servers were even at our living room, because we have to do calculations. We could not even access our building. But the week before, we organized a Spanish relativity meeting. The Friday before, we were having to pitch the defense. This was the first day of classes. And it was after lunch, and Sasha, I think, was the first day. Are you looking at your email? No. Have you looked at some plots? No. You can have a look. So then we're playing with injections, but the injections are off. I mean, this looks very interesting. And then you start seeing more emails and more. But we have something here different. We have one of our PhD students that just 2 weeks earlier were sent to Hanford to do 3 months of shifts. And we're just waiting him to wake up like, hey, that's more. So they told us to panic from the side, and all the checks they were doing. And I was asking him, like, have you looked into the secret channels? Yes, we already have. It's forbidden. Yes, we know. We have. And they have 0. Excellent. It's no hard rejections. So I was looking interesting.
And this is part of sociology of science. It's peculiar how we work with science.
So basically, I think it took, I don't know if it was 1 or 2 more weeks, maybe just,
A month.
well, first it was the email from the spokesperson from Gavi. That a week later she said, like, we are busy, we are going to be busy.
And secret. Nobody
Of
knows.
course secret, of course secret. And how do you live that is interesting because they have plenty of work to do. They have a lot of people.
Uh-huh.
The
No
way-
trains.
The way the group works or how they are distributed in the building is also interesting. We realize that many of the meetings have ended to take place at home because it was the only way to have it secret meetings.
Wow, this is impressive. At Zen, it was impossible to keep the secret.
No, we kept the secret.
Yeah, it was awesome. This
Because,
is really important.
yeah, but because when you tell people that you discovered something important, you want to be able to convince them and you have to convince yourself first. And so saying it too early, you can't really answer the hard questions that you ask. So we had to keep it secret, but there's good motivation to keep it secret, even for 1,000 people.
And then it was a good question, like, how likely is that this happens by chance?
So there were 2 questions immediately. One is, how are we being fooled? Meaning that maybe it can happen accidentally. Or how are we fooling ourselves?
Yeah.
2 different questions. And the 2 different questions were basically, could the instrument make a signal somehow that looks like this? And we have to test that. And the second is there somebody devious that put this into our data somehow, like a hacker or something into our data?
You only have 3 persons in the world.
Yeah.
But you only
To
need
be
one.
one.
And so we had to convince ourselves of both things.
Yeah, it's interesting the sociology of science, honesty. It's impressive for me. You say, I need to convince myself first to convince others.
Yeah.
I hope the world will be like this. Normally, it's the opposite. First, I convince others, and then at home. But honesty is really a part of science. At Zen, we had a similar episode, but black part of history with these superluminic neutrinos.
Yes.
I think you learn a lot from these bad examples, right?
But it wasn't dishonesty, it was a mistake.
No, it was.
And so it's the reason why scientists need to check themselves very, very carefully. That history was sending neutrinos from CERN to Italy, to the Gran Sasso, and timing how long it took. And it apparently took shorter than the speed of light, meaning that neutrinos went faster than the speed of light. But it took almost 1 year for them to discover that they had made a technical mistake. And it actually wasn't faster than the speed of light. So that shows that you need to check yourself very carefully. They made a mistake. They went public before they checked themselves well.
Yeah, this is the thing. Going to the public first is risky.
And we tried to be very, very careful.
Inside the collaboration, we are doing many cross-checks. We are doing many cross-checks among each other. So you have sets of teams reviewing other sets of teams, reviewing every single detail. That's the reason it takes also ages for us to publish something. We even check every single line of code we write to produce any single result.
Yeah.
Even if it's not public.
That all sounds boring, but it's actually fun.
It's fun. Yeah, of course. Everything in science is fun, actually. Yeah. That's why in the list of professions, scientist is the first intrustable. People trust scientists because we work first trying to convince ourselves to convince the others. And this, for me, I was in the auditorium that day of the neutrinos.
Of the neutrinos.
And for me, it was a really interesting experience because the seniors at CERN, they knew that it was a mistake. They were like a little bit like, probably there is something that is not understood there because you need like a confirmation, you need to do like crazy checks. It's interesting how everything works from this point of view, right?
In a sense, that was harder because we proved that something that everybody expects, Einstein's right. They were proving that Einstein was wrong because Einstein says that neutrinos should go at the speed of light. they go faster, it violates Einstein. He's usually right.
Yeah, I have another curiosity. In this time, it probably is more personal. But what is the role of your feelings, instinct, and beliefs in what you do? I mean, gravitational waves can be there or not. Peaks can be there or not. And sometimes I have this question of, do you play with your beliefs in a discovery? I mean, before you found it, you have like a kind of instinct, or you were like objective, perfectly objective. Did you have the feeling that they were there?
In this case, not always, but in this case, yes, because Einstein's usually right. Yeah, but it was a hard problem to see gravitational waves, and it was a big payoff if you did, because of what Alicia said, that it's a new way to look at the universe. So in our case, the big challenge was, how do we build the ability to do that? That took new technology and clever ideas and so forth. In the case of the neutrinos or the Higgs boson, they're all different. They're different scientific goals. So at any time, we have some fundamental problems before us that we want to solve the answers to. And usually it's some combination of clever ideas, and for us, the advancement of technology that enables us to do something now that we couldn't do 20 years ago or 50 years ago. And LIGO couldn't have been done 20 years ago. We just didn't have the technological ability. So the cleverness and what we need as a scientist is to figure out what really basic questions we can answer now because of the advances of computers, technology, ideas that couldn't be answered 20 years ago, because the problems mostly aren't. Maybe dark matter is a little bit developed out of newness, out of what we've learned, but usually we have problems that have sat for a long time, like gravitational waves. And what's happened isn't that we're just cleverer, but we've developed enough understanding of it, technology, and so forth, so that we can attack it. You want to attack the problems that you can solve.
But I would say what has a lot of merit was Ray and Keep many years ago, I was saying yesterday in 1975, when they came to the conclusion of what was the sensitivity level we would be required. Because I mean, as you ask, what you were going to expect to see? Well, Keep working on it, and he basically classified different kinds of sources that we could detect. Stochastic, the transits, the supernovas, and the binaries. Then the question, like, okay, this kind of sources can emit gravitational waves, maybe at the detectable level. How many of them you have? How long you have to wait until you see a first detection? How sensitive you have to be the detectors in order to see far away, in order to see one of these events? And basically, the numbers they came out were quite right, but we did not have any source guaranteed. Now, since we have already got the first detections, we are expecting the next year when the detect comes on, see more of unknown systems that we want to discover. Situation is a bit different if we will go to space in the future with the launch of LISA. For LISA, we do already have sources with name and surnames that we know they are already there. They are tagged. That we have them in catalogs, and we know they will make gravitational waves, and that in that frequency band that will be accessible from space, we will be able to detect them very strong. So from space, the problem is going to be different because they are going to be very strong signals. Our problem here is that our signals are so weak always. We have to dig from the noise. And basically, we have to develop this beautiful machinery and keep improving that in order to see more and more. But I'm pretty sure in a few years we are going to have precision gravitational wave astronomy that's going to really to be a tool to do not just the first few observations, but plenty of them, and that's many questions.
With LIGO still, because you are improving it.
We have not yet reached design sensitivity. This is going to be a great instrument.
So this is the beginning of a great story, learning something about the universe, nothing more, right?
That's why scientists have to be optimistic about what we can do. Otherwise, we don't make progress.
So you started with the first detection like 2 years ago. Now you have 6.
And a trigger.
Sorry?
And a trigger.
What is coming next? Are you expecting any new fancy things? What are your expectations? Like you already detected like a merging of two black holes, a collision of neutron stars. What else can we detect? Like imagine what will be tomorrow the best news. In the morning you get a message. Wow, amazing.
The best news is easy. That's to detect something that we never expected at all, something completely different, which is possible because gravitational waves are the sources of gravitational waves can be completely different than the sources of what we know everything about the universe, like light, electromagnetic waves. So I think the biggest thing that can happen is to find something completely new that we never even expected because we had no information.
And much more concerned.
What
I
is-
just want to detect the pulsar galaxy.
The what day?
A pulsar.
Also, the type
Wow.
of neutron star. Imagine a star the size of the sun, twice the size of the sun in mass, but very small, just with a radius of about 10 kilometers. That's a beautiful
This is why we need 1,000 people,
Yeah.
because we have to look at pulsars and we have to look at something we've never dreamed could possibly be there.
So now
And they're different problems.
It's a,
Of course, I mean,
So-
we know the existence of pulsars, we know there are many of them, but we have not yet seen them in gravitational waves.
but I like your field. So you are a particle physicist, background, working in general relativity, looking to the stars. It's a good combination, right? It's like a little bit of everything in modern physics. It must be amazing how you combine these fields, right? Because many people think that you are a particle physicist, you work with particles, you are a cosmologist, you work with these theories of general relativity, you are an astronomer, you work with the star. How can you relate them? And do you think you enrich them when you combine them?
Oh, absolutely. I think the biggest problem we have as scientists is to become too specialized. The tools, the ideas that we learn are transferable. So applying what you know and what you and the methods you have, the tools you have to different problems is probably a bigger leap, but a bigger gain than just making small steps in which you already know how to do.
We've been 50 minutes talking about general relativity, gravitational waves, this fancy discovery that was happened 2 years ago. And I wanted the audience to ask whatever they want. Do you have any curiosity about what they have done? Any question here? I will check also Instagram in case you are shy. It happens. Twitter in case you are shy.
What do you think
Wait for the microphone, otherwise nobody will.
What do you think about the Lisa Pathfinder launch for the gravitational waves?
They did They did great. Unfortunately, we announced the discovery of gravitational waves at basically at the same time they were announcing how great they were doing with their launch. So basically, we were stepping on each other's news, and we both had covered Fish review letters about it. So this Pathfinder was a great success. It was a technological mission to demonstrate the feasibility of future space mission, LISA, developed for many, many years, and on top was also very strong participation from Spain. And actually could demonstrate that the technology that was needed, the scientists, the people, the group involved, the sensitivities and the requirements they achieved were much, much better than what we were supposed to achieve just with this Pathfinder. So it was really a great success. So that basically that, together with now that we have detected gravitational waves, I think pushed, and ESA suddenly immediately then approved ESA to be the L3, the large third mission of the Cosmic Vision program. So that has a launch date of 2034 or earlier.
So Lisa, in case you don't know about it, is an experiment where the apparatus to detect gravitational waves, instead of being in the surface of Earth, is up there in the space.
Yes.
So imagine this lab they rule there in the States.
With arms of 1 million kilometers or several millions of kilometers.
But the key idea we should make sure people understand, when we work here on Earth, we work in certain frequency band. It's the same as our ears. But if we go in space, we work at a different frequencies, lower frequency. And that's just like astronomy, where you have instruments that work in the visible, what we see, or infrared or ultraviolet. And astronomy has made great progress by looking at the same phenomenon or different phenomenon in different wavelengths or different frequencies. And that's what will be enabled by going to space for gravitational waves.
Yes, we are going to see completely different objects and different phenomena.
Like
so the supernovas you will see here, but the mergers of galaxies, you will see them from space.
And the Big Bang, the gravitational waves
Invisible
coming.
everywhere, but I don't think Lisa can also not even do it. You need Lisa 2, and you need LIGO 3 or 4.
Yeah.
But these modulations are now happening here. So we are like because of the Big Bang now.
Yes.
Somehow, right? All the time,
All the time.
every day. Sundays also.
But you're not blurry because you're doing that.
A bit.
Oh, what's the amplitude compared to the one you detected? It's 1,000 times, 1 billion times.
Oh, I would say, I don't know, but maybe we detect 1,000th the size of a proton. It's probably 1 billionth the size of a proton.
Wow. And this is happening all the time. And this will be interesting to understand how the universe was produced, right?
Yes, in principle, if we can make detectors that are sensitive enough, we can go back to the very earliest instance of the Big Bang.
It could be also possible to rule out theories about multiverse, something like this, inflationary theory.
Well, by not seeing
Inflation.
anything, we have already started ruling out several theories.
Wow. So imagine gravitational waves to understand the beginning of the universe. Any other questions? There.
Yeah.
First.
Question for Mr. Maris. So, how did you pass on having the idea of making it happen? How did you get the financial support? How did you engage other scientists to participate in your project? So, I'm interested in the process of making it happen, such a big project, and convincing not only other scientists but also other.
I will repeat the question here because probably está preguntando cómo pasas de la idea a hacer la realidad en un proyecto que puedas producir como un experimento. ¿Cómo lo haces desde el punto de vista de management, ¿no?
As Alicia said, first you have to develop the ability to do it experimentally. The technology and ideas were developed in the 1980s. In the 1990s, we had enough confidence in the ability to build this kind of instrument, but it cost hundreds of millions of dollars. And then the big problem was that we didn't know that we could detect gravitational waves. And the fact that we thought we could make an instrument that good didn't mean that people who reviewed us or the government thought we could make an instrument that good. We were lucky because we have a funding agency in the United States called the National Science Foundation. And the National Science Foundation was run at that time by a director whose name was Neil Lane. He later was the president's science advisor. And he was a very good scientist. And he could balance the fact that what we were doing was very risky because we hadn't proven how well we could do it. We didn't know the sources were going to be detectable. And generally, the problem in doing really new science is that the establishment's not very risky. You can't take large steps. But we proposed to take this very large step. And luckily, the National Science Foundation was run by a director who understood that it was worth taking a risk on what we were doing because the payoff was so large.
There is this risk, but it's not that anybody with any crazy idea can go and get money. It's not as easy as you can imagine. And of course, LIGO just not come from nothing. There were several prototypes developed around the world. Caltech itself, there was a 40-meter prototype, a 10-meter prototype in Glasgow, 100-meter in Garching. So there have been smaller devices that they have been developing the technology. So you have to prove first. Big brother.
But the usual extension, so the ones she talked about were tens of meters, and we're kilometers long. And usually in science, it's easy to convince somebody to make a step of a factor of 2, maybe even a factor of 10 if you're really lucky. But we wanted to make a step of almost 100 in size, and that's where the risk is the step was very large and the science was unclear. But the payoff was huge, so it was easy to convince ourselves that it was worth trying. I've also done experiments that have failed that I've tried. So it was worth trying, but it's hard to convince the system to do it. We were lucky that the National Science Foundation was agreed to do it and then stayed with us for 20 years when we did detect it.
Also, the program was very smart. It was designed in 2 phases, initial and advanced. And even the National Science Foundation was aware that with the initial detectors, the ones that have been running between 2002 and 2010, you will not see a thing, or if you would see a thing, it will be just by pure chance. But that was first step to really prove that these detectors can be a reality. On the top, you have to build a community, you have to build software, way to analyze the data, you have to understand more the sources. There are many things to do. So we start working together, even knowing that we might not detect anything. The device that was promising to give us something was Advanced LIGO, when reaching basically design sensitivity. We have started delivering results before reaching design sensitivity. So I think the LIGO has been a success. Success in management, success in building these instruments, being on time, being on budget. I think it's an example.
And doing science, great science.
Yeah, right. Any other questions here? That will be the last questions. So go ahead.
That's a difficult question. I'm an engineer, so I will probably how do you manage technical stuff at LIGO? Because you're like listening all the time, or you want to listen all the time. But for example, at university like CERN, they produce the protons and they know when they have to listen. But in LIGO, they are coming from outside, so you're not listening. How do you?
Está preguntando que cómo hacen con las paradas técnicas, porque bueno, pues los protones en el colisionador sabes cuándo van a llegar y cuándo no, pero las ondas gravitacionales llegan cuando llegan. Entonces, ¿cómo organizas las pausas para que esto no pase, ¿no? Y no te pierdas una onda?
In science in general, you have sometimes you know where to look and how to look. In the case of CERN having a particle accelerator, you know when particles collide, exactly. And therefore, you look at the data at exactly that time, which helps the data analysis issue, but still the amount of data at CERN is what we call big data. We have big data for a different reason. We don't have so many channels like big CMS detector that our host worked on, which has, I don't know, 50,000 channels altogether. We have one, which is gravitational waves, but we have to look at all times and all directions and all kinds of signals. So that our challenge is also a big data challenge, but it's a quite different one from what's done, which to me illustrates that you don't just learn how to do science in one way and do it. The problem we deal with is a problem that is dealt with now all over, which is big data. But the way we have big data is a different problem than the trigger data that happens at CERN. It has not harder challenges necessarily, but different challenges.
The data analysis is extremely challenging because we are looking at many different things with different characters. So, as for example, sometimes we don't know what to look at. So we usually receive triggers when they are GRBs, gamma reverse. And if you set us a kind of a trigger like that, then our searches, our ability to search for things are much deeper. We are more sensitive. So it all depends on the kind of analysis. So on any information you can give us, you're coming from neutrinos or from light, and also help us to detect and to enhance the chances that we can see gravitational waves compared to if you don't pass any information.
Maybe the hardest challenge is what I said before. If we see something we didn't expect at all. So what does it look like? We don't know. So how do we find that? That's a big challenge. We try to do it in an unbiased way, looking for any kind of signal that might be there, but almost anything you do has biases in it. So we're looking at different methods that have been developed, like artificial intelligence or machine learning as a possible way to look in a more unbiased way than we have so far. So far, we've used mathematical techniques to try to look at signals that may have very different shapes. What's called wavelets we use. But we're learning how to do that. But that's maybe the biggest challenge for us, which doesn't exist on particle accelerators. And that's to look for something that's completely different than you expect.
Muchas gracias por la pregunta. Go ahead. No. ¿Está? Sí, adelante. Vamos con the last two questions of this guy.
I got a question to Dr. Barish. Were you afraid of what conventional media said about your experiments and repercussions it might have? Because I remember that when scientists published a paper about the universe being a hologram, many people misunderstood it.
Sí, está preguntando si tenía algún miedo a la hora de comunicar este descubrimiento al público basado en otras experiencias negativas, como fue el caso del universo holográfico, donde fue mal interpretado por los medios y causó cierto revuelo, ¿no? Esta mala interpretación.
I think it goes back to what we said before. First problem is to convince yourself. If you convince yourself and you do the discipline to really do it right, you're not afraid of what somebody else is going to say because you know what the answers are. You just have to convince them. If you have a weak case because you didn't really look at all the problems and details, which has been true of these other examples, then you should be afraid. We were not afraid. We took our time.
Not so much time.
They work hard, right? I imagine the days after the discovery was like, did you sleep?
Sure. We all have to sleep.
Okay, well, this is out with Nobel, right? Okay, Carlos, I want to ask you something. I'm going to ask you to imagine something. What kind of applications? What kind of applications can we imagine now with this kind of discoveries? I mean, like, not now, but in 1 century. Like this, maybe tractor array of the Death Star.
Entonces pregunta qué aplicaciones se le puede dar, ahora que ya sabemos que existen las ondas, en el futuro, ¿no? Ya hablando ya de miles de años, supongo, ¿no? ¿Qué aplicaciones futuras podría tener?
Yeah. That's a good question and a hard one to answer in a short phrase. We're doing what's called fundamental science. So we're doing science to answer basic questions, not to build a new gadget, basically. However, in fundamental science, probably as many advances have been made technologically as have been made by very directed science. Two examples in my time as a scientist, just because they were next door, was that I was in Berkeley in the 1960s when something called stimulated emission was proven and won the Nobel Prize in early 1960s. Nobody knew it had any example at all, use at all. It turns out to be one of the biggest industries in the world now, which is lasers. It took 10 years before anyone realized that it could be used for something like that. And I was there, I didn't realize, of course, none of us did. It was just an interesting and important physics discovery, another prediction by Einstein, that stimulated emission existed, a way that there was correlations in atoms. The second, which also was very near where I worked, had to do with something in physics, which was another Nobel Prize called nuclear magnetic resonance. This was done when I was working at Cornell by a physicist at Cornell. He won the Nobel Prize. I didn't work on this, but I saw it. It was an important physics concept, a little bit like ours, that was proven years later. And it turns out that that's a very important medical instrument now, which wasn't realized at the time. That's magnetic resonance imaging, MRI, that's used so much medically. They've, of course, erased the term nuclear because no one would want to have nuclear effects if they are examining their body. But basically, those are two examples. So in fundamental science, the biggest payoffs have come from just the knowledge that we've gained by doing the science we've done without thinking about applications. There's another way we have applications. For example, in LIGO, we've developed the ability to isolate ourselves from the ground. We've done that by making devices that make this very, very stable. Well, that's useful, for example, in making microelectronics. So the kind of technologies that we've developed can be directly applied if they're not too expensive and so forth, in ways where we've just developed technology. But the biggest payoffs have come, as I said, by just learning about basic fundamental science. Some of them, some things give no particular application. You can't expect each one to do that. Gravitational waves, we don't see any direct application. The fact that the effect is so small, it seems unlikely, but we don't know.
But developing the tools.
But the tools are...
So even from the different technologies that have been developed for LIGO, from the lasers and so on, there have already been some transfer of knowledge. There's not even companies working on some of the same things, on sub-devices of LIGO that have been developed. But also when you develop things for data analysis, you think about the problem because you have the problem with your data, but then the tool you have developed, it can be transferred to other fields. And there have been now several tools from the software we have developed that has been transferred to other problems in medicine as well.
Feynman said it perfectly. He said, fundamental physics is like sex. It has a practical application, but this is not why we do it, right? It's something similar. So in this case, we have this similarity. So it's been great to be with you here, have this great guest here to talk about physics. It's time to finish. Yeah, because we have to lunch. But before leaving, I know there are a lot of students watching this video. They are a little bit like making questions. Should I be a scientist? Is science something that I can develop in the future? Do I have the courage to do it? There are a lot of people, students, that ask this question every day, if they are able to do it, if there is a future for me. Can you say like a few words of why you do science, why science is an interesting career? You're a Spanish, you're a good man, you're an example for many people. Can you both say?
I will tell the young people that they should just follow their instincts and follow their dreams. Don't worry about the job market. You have to work hard, but just do what you like. And it's science, it's science, medicine, or it's something else, whatever. You have to do what you would like to do. Fight for it.
Great message.
And besides that, it's a lot of fun.
Perfect. Last words for this live video for all of you. So thank you very much, Universidad de Islas Baleares, Alicia, Barry, and all of you being here, watching, and present here in the room. So thank you very much. Just to show this is no fake, we will do like kind of a selfie here. So,
Selfie of the audience.
yeah, say hello to the audience. Yes, they are not fake; they're real. So thank you very much, everybody. See you soon.